Good morning, everybody. It's half past ridiculous, and we're seeking a sentiamentium. Once again, we have no idea where we're going with this. Kind of want to touch on maxims today, though. What they are, how to use them. Basically, well, it's another way of looking at fundamental truths, getting them clear in your head, so that when you do need to bring up certain concepts, you can use these and everybody understands what they're talking about. Everybody knows what they are. And I don't know how far we're going to go with this, but we're going to touch on it and see how that goes. Good morning, Carl. How are you doing today?
Good morning, John. I'm doing really well, thank you very much.
I knew you were going to get
had a little issue with the energies this week, but yeah, that's an ongoing story, as you know.
Oh, believe me, I haven't slept in like 8 days. So yeah, I understand what's going on with the energies for sure. I'm hoping that it's going to crack soon. Now that the stuff we touched on. Basically what's going on with Heather Antucci-Giraffe and Randall Bean with the UCC filings, the OPPT stuff. The last bit of paperwork was filed last week, end of last week, and it really very clearly states that you guys, the corporations, have no more authority anymore. They've been foreclosed and terminated. They don't exist. It's all bullshit. It's all deceptive acts and practices, fairly clearly laid out. And that's going to have a tremendous effect. Probably, well, it'll be right away for some people. It'll take a while for others. But it's a tremendous tool now that this is all in the public record. And I think we'll probably see some effect, dramatic effect coming out in the next week or so. But again, it's going to be up to us as Joe Average to make it happen. Because if we don't scream and yell and say no, then the people who have been foreclosed on are just going to keep doing business as usual and nothing's going to change. So it's up to us to change it. We need to make the noise ourselves and live like it's all finished, because it is. It's all done. It's just a matter now of making it real, because it's done. It's over, essentially. And I would go essentially. I would go into the documents. They're complicated. The wording is horrible because it's all legalese. It's written for the legal system. But we've got them posted. I sent a copy to Carl. I tried to put a copy up on the Sentiamentium, the chat room, but we're limited to 8 megabytes, and this is 42 and a half meg worth of document. It's like 120 some odd page PDF. Most of it is supporting documents. There's only 5 or 6 pages of actual meat. The rest of it's all supporting documents. So don't freak out for 120 some odd pages. But we'll figure out how to get that out and available. If you need to find it, it's called if you want to do a search, it's called Pacer Recorded 09/29/17. Precipe HATJ.pdf. And I believe you can find that on IUV, i-uv.com. Actually, let me check and make sure that's accurate. I-uv, shouldn't take much to bring it up here. Yes, the documents are posted on IUV, so you can download them from there. And
can you post that link, John, into the AM server, you think?
Let me see if I can get it directly to it. There it is, right there. Okay. Okay, that link is posted directly into the server. If you need to read it, this is the full text all however many pages, actually 134 pages of the final filing, which basically shuts everything off. And it's now public record, so anybody and their dog can use this and essentially tell the people who are trying to screw you out of money or force you into contract to just, you've been foreclosed and terminated. You're done. Go away. Probably not going to be that easy.
And that's going to take a few balls, as they say. But
certainly. It's probably not going to be that easy. In some cases it might. Other cases, chances, you might have to do a little bit of dancing to make it work. But the tool's there. It's available for us. It's open to us. And one of the things I wanted to go into today, at least to start with, is the maxims that are listed on this document on page 2. And there's Heather's got 10 of them on here. They're written in essentially plain English, so anybody can understand them. It's not Latin. And I'm not going to go completely through them because it's a package, the way she's got them written. One leads to another, refers back to certain other ones, and it can be a bit of a puzzle. But the core information of the maxims are there. Now, what a maxim is a fundamental truth. It is something that no one can argue with. It's like saying the sky's blue. Nobody's going to say, well, no, it's not. It's purple. At times it could be orange. At times it could be red, but the sky is essentially blue. Wind blows. Ice is cold. Those are fundamental truths. And within law, there are certain concepts which always hold true, and they can be held up as truth. And that's what these maxims are. And the first one,
these come down from Roman times, these particular maxims as well. That's how stated as facts they actually are. It's not, anything that's come about very recently.
Yeah, these are ancient, right? These are, they've always been true. They always will be true. There's no arguing, and no one is going to tell you that if you cite a maxim and it actually applies, they can't say, well, no, that's not true, because everybody knows it is. And the first one she's got listed here is nothing can be born from a fraud or deceptive acts and practices, and all such actions are null and void ab initio. Okay, ab initio means from the beginning. So the way I understood this, the way I heard this the first time was fraud vitiates all. And if there is fraud or deceptive acts and practices inherent in an action, the entire action is gone. It doesn't exist. This is what's going on pretty much with all of the courts these days. Is there's all of the courts are operating under deceptive acts and practices, including what we would probably expect to be a common law situation where there is harm and there is a victim, but because everything is commercial, all of the courts are commercial. There is no common law courts anymore. It's all fraud, because it's all commerce. All commerce is fraud. So essentially, they have no authority. All of their actions, all of their decisions are void from the beginning. It's like they never even happened. Now, the second one, jurisdiction is the legal authority to hear, do proceedings, and make discretion, judgment, and order in an action. And yes, okay, I totally agree with that. People quite often do the etymology of the word jurisdiction, which means law words, thinking that it's simply the language that's being used, but it's more than that. It's the actual right to make a legal determination. And this is something we touched on this, was it like first or second show? I think it was the second show.
Second show, yeah, we did the jurisdiction.
Which actually didn't get recorded, so we retouched on it on the third show. But you'll find it. It's the second one in the list if you're looking at the archive. And there's 7 elements of jurisdiction that have to exist. And if any one of those gets challenged, preferably all of them gets challenged, because if you have no jurisdiction, none of them are going to apply. They have to be answered. If you challenge jurisdiction, nothing can happen until that question is answered. And right now, the way things stand, because of the OPTPT filings, because of the UCC law ordinance, which has been created through consent or non-action in this case, there's no possible way any of these courts can actually get jurisdiction unless you give it to them. They don't inherently have it. They have to have your consent. They have to have you cooperate and give them jurisdiction. The number 3.
And we did touch on all that. Sorry, John. In those shows that we did, we actually touched on that as well. So just to expand on that, you should really listen to those shows and get a better comprehension of what truly jurisdiction is, and how you can fight quite adequately just knowing that on its own.
And again, we're going to harp on this over and over and over again. This is not advice. This is simply talking points and starting points of your own research. You got to do it yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. If you want to protect yourself, you have to protect yourself. Okay, number 3. Lack of jurisdiction can be duly declared at any time prior to final disposition of any action. So if you go into a situation, and before it's actually finished, you can go, hey, wait a minute, no, stop. You guys don't have jurisdiction. I don't consent anymore. Go by. This is done. You can challenge it at any time, as long as it's not actually finished and you've agreed to the outcome. Because once you've agreed to the outcome, the contract is finished. It's done. So you can't really challenge after the fact. So you're better off, if you're going to challenge jurisdiction, do it right from the beginning, before anything happens. If you get a thing in the mail and it's, something that has nothing to do with harm, this is all about sucking up money, or a license, or you didn't register your children, or you didn't get a vaccination, or anything, something really ridiculously stupid, which has no real bearing on anybody's lives, except it's going to put you in a slavery situation or take away your resources. There's no harm, loss, or damage involved. Then challenge it. I strongly suggest you challenge it, because if you look through the documents, look through this information that was presented here, these corporations, the United States, all of the divisions of the United States Corporation have been foreclosed and no longer exist. They're not there anymore, which includes borders, customs, financial interests, legal interests, military. It's all gone. It's all been. I don't know how to describe it, because on the surface it appears that it's all business as usual, but in reality, it's only business as usual because the people who are doing it don't realize yet that the company they work for is gone. The train's out of gas and it's rolling to a stop. And now that this is all public record, this is been filed in the public record, there's no going back. They can't say, no, it didn't happen, because we know it happened. We know it's there, and it's now open, available for anybody to look at. Okay, number 4, when lack of jurisdiction is duly declared, the burden of proving jurisdiction shifts to the one who invokes its proper. Which means that if you challenge jurisdiction, it's up to the one who's going, no, I have jurisdiction, to prove it. And they have to do that first before they can do anything. Now, certainly the guys with the funny hats and the guns, they've got a gun, and they're not gonna even care. So chances are that's not the time to challenge jurisdiction, even though they really don't have any. But they do have a gun, and that can get ugly. So I would probably hold off until you're in a little better situation where you've got a little more clout. Carl, did you have something to add to that? I thought I heard you.
No, sorry. No, go ahead. Well, actually, the only addition I would say is, having been a cop and having been trained to a certain level, I would agree with that, although we didn't have guns, but we were given the belief that we had the ultimate authority, and they do have a tendency these days to employ knuckle draggers rather than intellectuals. So best not push too many buttons in that regard.
Yeah, and we tested that. If you score higher than 100 on your IQ test, you will not get a job in the police forces. Okay, so number 5, once a lack of jurisdiction is duly declared, an alleged court cannot proceed in an alleged action when it clearly appears that said court lacks the required jurisdiction, and any action made by said court is null and void ab initio. Totally makes sense. I mean, anybody who listens to this is going to go, well, yeah. I mean, if it's you challenge jurisdiction, they can't move ahead because they have no they have no right to even make noise, and if they do anything, then it doesn't mean anything. Enforcing it could be a little more tricky than what we expect to see, but I think if you follow the other suggestions we made, and the big one is to be as public and make as much noise in the public, bring everything to light as much as possible, then that takes away a lot of their toys, a lot of their tools that they just walk over top of this stuff. Because if it's in the dark and nobody's watching, they can do whatever they want, and nobody's going to know. Mm. But if you're making it public, if it's making a lot of noise and telling everybody what's going on, chances are they're not going to be able to do half of the stuff that they want to do. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, this particular bit was prime example of what Mark in the UK has been going through recently, especially with the court, because he did exactly what was stated earlier. He challenged jurisdiction before a final order had been made, before the process was complete. He challenged jurisdiction, and they kind of tried to do an end run around him, and they've actually issued an action, issued an order, but it's unsigned. So two things. One, the order, even if it was signed, would have been irrelevant because the issue of jurisdiction hadn't been settled at that point. And of course, the other issue was it wasn't signed.
Yeah.
So they were just trying to trick him into accepting the order anyway.
Yep, because it's just, you know, when you're dealing with the corporate courts, which are just, they're banks, basically, they're not a lawful court. The judge's decision is an opinion. That's it, nothing more. And you know, a number of people that I know that I've talked to, the judge gave his opinion. He went, well, thank you for your opinion, but I reject it because it's wrong. And it's just an opinion. Okay, number 6. An alleged person or court that appears to lack jurisdiction has no authority to make or hear action or reach merits and determinations, but rather shall forthwith dismiss the alleged action, and in the event of failure to do so, Maxim 1 is potentially enforced, which Maxim 1, if you remember, is fraud vitiates all. Because if they act without answering the jurisdiction issue, they're committing fraud. And it's very clear that they're committing fraud. So fraud vitiates all, makes everything go away. Number 7, when due declaration is made that a person act... hang on. When a due declaration is made that a person, act, thing, or thing is not legal, the burden of proving legality of said person, act, or thing shifts to the one who invokes it. And, I mean... whoever makes the claim, the burden of proof is on the one who makes the claim. And we're not talking about a claim of lack of jurisdiction. We're not talking about a claim of something isn't right. We're talking about the claim that this is legal and I can do it, and it's because there's harm involved, right? If some guy says, well, I have the authority to put you in jail for 20 years, and you go, well, no, actually you don't. It's up to the one who thinks he can to prove he can. Because otherwise the harm would be mitigated if he actually didn't have that right. So you got to look at the direction of harm, where the weight of or the burden of proof is on. And typically the burden of proof is on the one who makes the claim. Okay, number 8. Absent legally due, sworn, verified, and validated declaration made with due signature and seal of proof of a person, act, thing, or jurisdiction, any alleged action made by such person, act, or thing is null and void ab initio. What this means is if you're not going to put your butt on the line, you have no standing. If you're not ready to take responsibility, take full liability for your actions, you have no right to take an action. That's what that means. And this goes right down to one of the very core arguments that I've used or I've talked about quite often, and that is that a fictional plaintiff is fraud. If someone can bring an action without having to put their name on it, without having to put their butt on the line, and they're able to hide behind some concept, some fiction, some name on a piece of paper, the one whose that action is coming up against has no recourse. They can't call him up on the stand. They can't make any sort of amends or find remedy in the situation, because the one named or claiming to bring that action doesn't exist. It's a concept. It's a piece of paper, and you can't put a piece of paper in jail. It doesn't work. So if the charge,
I use the traffic cameras for this one, John. Simply,
that's right.
You get a ticket from a traffic camera. You can't call the traffic camera to court. So
that's right.
That's the simplistic view that I use as an analogy for that.
Yep,
seems to work well.
Yep, that's right. So if that's it, one of the elements of jurisdiction is somebody has to put their name on it. Somebody has to take responsibility for it. Otherwise, they just start trumping up garbage, and they false charges after false charges after false charges over and over and over again, and you spend your entire life trying to dance around this stuff. That's what this is intended to stop. If you can't swear to the charges, you don't have a right to bring them. Okay, number 9, when a duly sworn, verified, and validated declaration made with due signature and seal is duly noticed, a due rebuttal shall be made to each specific and particular point made in the due declaration being rebutted. And this comes down to your affidavits. When you when you submit a proper, lawful affidavit, signed under oath and penalty of perjury and all that stuff, every single point on that, if you're going to rebut the affidavit, you have to rebut every single point. Now, the ones that I've read, there's only been 1 or 2 points that are actually false, that are not correct, that can be attacked. So I think as long as you can disprove some of it, it's going to work. But you have to cover them all. Like with my...
You have to answer them all is basically what that comes down to, John.
Yes.
Every single point you have to answer, even if it means that you say point, 1, 2, 3, I agree.
Right.
You are answering the points of the affidavit, whether you agree, disagree, or otherwise. And you can do that by simply saying, I disagree. It's better if you can point out and completely rebut it by pointing out the exact opposite of what it is that they're alleging. That way it has a greater force in your return rebuttal affidavit.
Right.
Just saying you disagree doesn't mean anything, has no power.
Yeah. And, we've used this a number of times, and this is when we're writing letters. I think I brought this up to a few people that have asked. Make sure that when you are requesting or requiring a response, you let them know that a simple blanket no is not sufficient. You have to do this specifically. You have to give us reasons. And the reason for that is number 10. A duly sworn, verified, and validated declaration made with due signature and seal, duly unrebutted, specifically and particularly, stands as law. So if someone makes a claim and you don't counter that claim is held as truth. And this is the crux of the filings, because the filings made a claim. And there was lots of information. There was lots of backup to these claims. They made the claim to the heads of the corporations, the Pope, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, all of the head families, all of the top guys. I mean, the families are brokers, like Heather says. She works with these people all the time. They're not the people who are making the decisions. But she sent the documents. She made the claims and required a rebuttal from the people who are actually making the decisions, and they ignored it. They did not rebut it. And that was, oh goodness, years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that this has happened. So this is well perfected, and they can't be rebutted because it's truth. And basically the claim said, you guys are acting under deceptive acts and practices. You're acting under fraud, extortion, for the purposes of undue profit. Therefore, we are, as the original owners of all of this stuff, because the corporations don't own the people own the corporations. The people created the corporations. As the originals, the original owners of the corporations, we are foreclosing on it. You guys are out of business. And this was perfected 4.5 years ago. And it's taken up until now to actually bring it to the point where we can use it and make a difference with it. I mean, there's a whole bunch more stuff in this that you should go over and should read it. Trust me, it's not an easy read. It wasn't intended to be an easy read. It's intended as legalese so that the people who read legalese can understand it. But it's all there. All the information is there, and right down to the supporting documents. When you download this, when you grab it from IUV, you'll get everything you need. And essentially, for just about anything that's going to ever come up from this point on, as far as the corporations go, the corporate law, excuse me, taxes, statutory rules and regulations, even immigration, borders. This destroys it all. And the more people we have using it and forcing the issue, the faster we're going to get through all of this stuff, and the faster we're going to change the planet. Because we have to change the planet. We have to take it away from the profit mongers and the warmongers and the people who are assuming authority. And that's all that's all they've done is assumed authority. I'm the boss of you because I got a big stick. It's essentially what they're saying. We just taken away their stick. They don't have a stick anymore. So they can scream and yell and wave their fists up in the air and say, I'm the boss of you. And we get to laugh at them and go, no, you're not. You don't have authority. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But we need everybody to do it.
There are lots of other different ways that they do that. But that's what it boils down to. And I think the UCC filings and the OPPT filings, the information that came out in 2012 and that got used, I think, when it was perfected 2013, maybe, that went out to an awful lot of corporations and an awful lot of people. And as we've pointed out in the past, there seem to be some great successes in dealing with the corporations that were attacking people. Mm-hmm. That same process has to now happen again. But now we've got even more power because now we're 5 years into that. Almost 5 years into that, and they've still not rebutted any of it. And now we've got further action in this court filing to question the jurisdiction of everything that they're doing right now. Before, it wasn't even necessarily a question of jurisdiction. It was, we've just foreclosed on you. You're done. They haven't answered any of that. And now we're calling them out on any of their bullshit. You don't have the jurisdiction anymore.
Yep. And we can't do this with one or two people. We can't do it with small numbers. We have to have big numbers doing this. We need as many people as possible to at least grasp the concept that anyone, yourself included, me included, everybody who uses fraud or deceptive acts and practices in any of their dealings are void. Period. There's no questions about it. It doesn't matter how ironclad the contract is. If there's fraud or deception involved in the contract is gone. It doesn't exist. That simple understanding, if you can comprehend that clearly and articulate it clearly, you get it. And you're going to be able to use this information to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your property and your goods, and move this forward. But we need everybody to do this. We need millions and millions and millions of people. We need the majority of people to do this, so that when the alleged courts, or I guess the proper term now would be purported courts. When you purport something, you're bringing it up for the purpose of deception. So the purported courts, when they make noise, everybody says no. You have nothing. When the hired guns show up at your door, 5 or 6 of them show up, we need to have 200 people standing there going, no, you're not doing this. Make sure that there's 5 times more people than they have bullets. And they're not going to act. They're not going to start shooting people because they know better. They know they're going to lose. And we need to do this from this point on, and as many ways and as many chances as we get. But we need to do it peacefully. We need to do it understanding and comprehending that they're just people too. They're just like us. They're just confused and misguided, but they're just people. Mm-hmm. So, you can't go into this with vengeance. You can't go into this seeking conflict. We need to enter into this going, look, we don't have conflict anymore. You're causing the conflict. You're not going to happen. It's not going to, when the bully comes and wants to beat you up for your lunch money, if you try to beat up the bully, you're going to lose. If the bully comes and wants to beat you up for your lunch money and 40 people stand up and go, no, you're not doing that anymore. Here's an apple. Go have your lunch. Just leave us alone. Then the bully has no power. Take their power away. Don't give them more power by accelerating a conflict. If you need to have a large number of people to protect yourself, if some action is happening and there's 5 guys with guns out there and you bring 200 people in, make sure those 200 people do nothing but get in the way. You're not going to play this game. You're not going to shoot people and take them under force because you have no authority to do so.
Mm-hmm. Now, actually, I was going to bring up a question, but Jenny has just voiced it in the chat there.
Okay. How does this affect?
It's basically, how does this affect the rest of the world? Because this is a UCC filing from a case that has been brought, the action's been brought in the US. And actually, Heather is defending, I believe, during this court case, she's defending her actions and that of Randall Bean. So,
actually, it's everybody. Every single breathing entity on this planet is defended by this action. It's not just Heather. It's not just Randall.
I get that.
It's everybody.
The initial action was brought that way, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's only a couple of countries where this isn't really going to work that well. And they are countries who don't have central banks, who are not run by the corporations. But there's only, I think, it's going to be, let me think, probably Iran and Libya. There's only going to be a couple
Libya's
of.
It's not there anymore.
No, because there was 4, and they were the only 4 countries that were still being invaded at the time. They were countries that didn't have central banks, who the corporations didn't have their fingers into. I think that's now just down to 2.
3, I think, because we've got Iran, we've got Syria, and we have North Korea, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Those are the only ones left.
Okay. So you may have some issues.
208 countries or 206 countries listed in the United Nations. And there's 3 that are not controlled by central banks now.
Right.
And all 3 of them are being attacked.
Yeah.
Ostensibly for being the axis of evil and despot dictators who want to take over the world. Same storyline every time.
Yeah. So chances are it's going to apply wherever you're at. You may have to adjust it a little bit, which is why you do your own research, because what works in Canada doesn't necessarily work in the States, although the concepts are very, very similar. Now, what works in Canada probably will work in the UK, but may not work in Estonia, may not work in South Africa. So do your own research, look at it in the context of your area. The concept of fraud vitiates all is universal. It's going to apply to everything. It doesn't matter what country you're in or what system of law you're in. If there's fraud or deceptive acts and practices being employed, whatever they're doing is over. It's void. That's universal. How you going to implement it in the area that you're in, it might take a little bit of adjustments. Chances are it's all going to work just as it is, but be sure, do your own research, make sure that you understand this stuff. And, understand that sacrifice is the measure of credibility. So if you're standing up for yourself and you've got nothing to lose, nobody's really going to listen. But if you're standing up for yourself and you're about to lose everything, you have a lot more credibility than somebody who has nothing to lose.
Yeah, and the credibility there is actually with your friends and the neighbors and everybody else out there. the credibility as far as the other side is concerned, they don't give a shit, because if you're going to put everything on the line, they'll take it.
Yes.
That's what they do.
Yes. But they would take it anyway. I mean, that's the whole point of their existence, is to suck everything dry. And that's why the corporations exist. You know, the concept of the corporation is, in its very foundation, very fundamental state, you know, kind of a good thing. But it got taken over. It got expanded to the point where unscrupulous people did nasty, horrible, ugly, mean, despicable things hiding behind a corporate name, because a corporation you can't touch it. It doesn't exist. It's a concept. So this is where the problem exists. This is where the all of this stuff got totally out of hand, is that people hid behind the corporate umbrellas, and they could make any decisions they want. They could do basically whatever they bloody well pleased, and nothing ever touched them because they're behind this corporate wall. That's now over.
Let's not quibble about it. This was the lawyers doing.
Well, of course, and
because
they're the ones who
they
created
were the ones that came up with the idea. Yeah.
But this is no longer there. Okay, people are now, everything they do, they are fully and personally liable for their actions, myself included. And I've always been that way. I've always lived that way as best I could. I don't want to make a decision and hide behind a corporate veil. If I make a decision, I want to make sure that it's going to benefit as many people as possible. And if it must do harm, I'm going to talk to the people that are going to that it's going to be a problem with, and explain to them what's going on. So, because I have no desire to cause harm, be a dictator, cause other people issues. I know it happens. It does happen every once in a while, and sometimes it's unavoidable. I try to make amends. I try to get some sort of agreement. But these people hiding behind corporations, they don't give a damn. They just do whatever they bloody well please, and you can't touch me because it's the corporation. It's not me. You know, it's XYZ Corp that did it. Not anymore.
My particular case as well, John. I personally sought out the CEO and the CFO of the specific corporations that I was targeting. So this wasn't a letter to, you know, the corporation. This was a direct letter and a request for a response from the man or the woman that was in that position. And they very quickly dropped the whole ball because they know that they can't respond as the man.
Yep. And this is where we're at right now. If you have an issue with any of these corporations, with any of these people that are hiding behind the illusory protection of some fictional entity, take it away from them. If you're going to bring an action or demand a remedy, you don't demand it from XYZ Corporation. You demand it from the living person who is, or who has claimed responsibility for XYZ Corporation. So you don't send your bill or your demands to the court or to the Department of Defense or the Department of Health. You send it to the individual acting as the CFO or CEO of that department, and you make them personally liable for the actions of their alleged department, because the department doesn't exist anymore. It's just a bunch of people who think they still have authority, telling a bunch of other people who think they still have authority to do something that they probably wouldn't do normally, because they just don't understand that authority no longer exists. It's illusory. It's complete deceptive acts and practices, entirely deception. And the more we do it, the more we do it. I mean, the more the more people that understand this, the more people that get it, the easier life is going to be for everybody. I can't be any plainer than that. And if you want to change the world, if you want to see the world changed to the better, then get off your butt and do it. Because, Carl and I and a number of people, like-minded people who are similar to us have been working at this for a long time. And we've done about as much as we can do as a small group. We need a large group now. We need everybody on board. We need everybody to just stand up and say no. And it's all it is.
Yeah, and it's hardening, I must admit, that we're now seeing a lot more people standing in their own power and waking up to this and finding out information at such an accelerated rate, that it took us years to get to the stage that some of these people now are doing in 6 months, because that information is out there and is more tested now, and there's a lot more people supporting it. Because one of the biggest things, and something that I keep saying, is you have to lose the fear. It's the fear of the authority and the fear of what's going to happen to you, and the fear that what your friend's going to think. That's irrelevant. In the case of a moral situation, do you wait for your friends to back you up, or do you stand up and just do it anyway? Because typically you will find that if all of your friends are moral the same way you are, using that term loosely as well, by the way, but it's an understanding that we all have of how we should behave and how people should behave towards others. If you stand up and you lose that fear, typically you will find others will support you. They'll get up too. It just takes one, and I had to laugh a little bit on the pre-show because I was talking to John about stuff that both he and I have done in the past, and I always used the analogy of the World War I trenches, and you're screaming out of the trench, up the ladder and over the top, and screaming, "Come on, come on, let's go get him!" waving your arms, and you look behind you and there's nobody there. That's one of the worst feelings in the world, and that happened a lot in the past. These days, I think it's happening a lot less. I think there are more people that are jumping up and following because they know that they have to. The system now is, and I mean, just look everywhere you look. It's slavery. It's oppression. It's just not living, it's surviving, and we have to do something. We have to do something now.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with a juggernaut like what we're facing, what we have been facing for a while, it's daunting, most definitely. One or two people aren't going to make a big splash, but keep in mind that in comparison to the population of the Joe averages of the people who are getting screwed, we outnumber it like 20-1, no problem. It shouldn't be very difficult for us to get the numbers to make these people think twice, make the guys with the guns go, wait a minute, am I really doing this right? If I'm here to protect the people, which is what I got into this for, and the people seem to feel that they need to protect themselves from me, maybe I need to rethink what I'm doing. And if we can get the cops to rethink what they're doing, we've won. It's over at that moment, because the enforcement arm of the bullshit is done. It's gone. And I think
that's happening in the world already, John. Again, I spoke to you about Spain and Catalonia. Mm-hmm. Mia isn't on the channel today, but you know, that's a major issue that's going on in Europe. It's a further continuation of the breakdown of Europe based on economy and money, the transfer of money, because Catalonia is part of Spain and has been for quite some time. But they are one of the areas that funds the rest of Spain. It's a kind of the rich area, and what they're doing now is they are resisting and saying, no, we don't want to be part of Spain anymore, and actually we probably don't even want to be part of the EU anymore, so we're voting for our own independence against you, and we will if we decide, we will exist as our own independent country again, the way they had done hundreds of years ago. And Spain has now sent in, I think the figure was about 16,000 police from Spain itself to come into Catalonia and police that particular area to stop the vote, the vote for independence. And actually what's happening, it seems that the police who are in Catalonia are now standing up and backing the people of Catalonia, which is exactly what needs to happen. Exactly what needs to happen. But it is an ongoing battle, because the number of police that got sent into there are basically following orders. And instead of thinking independently and saying, shit, this is wrong, this isn't democracy, they have the right to vote. This is what democracy is supposed to be about, and we're going in there to stop that from happening. When do people stand up in that position and say, no, I'm not doing it, not doing it? Well, because certainly the police in Catalonia are now saying that, no, we're not enforcing your will. We are standing with the people of Catalonia. And yeah, this is a big thing, but that could easily, you know, it could spread out to anything, anywhere.
Yeah, but we've seen this this play out in a number of different situations. We've seen police lay down their riot gear and go and have a beer with the protesters. We've seen public displays of military frontline guys going, no, I will not fire on civilians. I will not accept unlawful orders. It's there. It's already there. It's already in the consciousness of the, how would I put it politely, the enforcement arm. It already exists there. We're seeing it in some of the recent videos of people who are filming the police, where 5 years ago they would have got a ticket. They probably would have wound up, you know, having to spend $300 or $400 and had their car towed. Where now what we're seeing is the cop going, well, it's just a taillight out. Let's just fix it. And he fixes it right there on the road for the people. There is a change. There is a shift happening in the consciousness. And, you know, unfortunately, the ones who get the press are the ones who are the nastiest out there. So we're seeing, you know, a lot more press for the nasty side of this rather than the press for the good side, because face it, bad news sells papers, and you know, look at the song "Dirty Laundry."
Also pushes the agenda too.
Well,
don't get involved with this because this is what's going to happen to you if you do.
That's right. That's right. Which is actually not. It's again the same thing that's closed the courts and the corporations down. It's all deceptive acts and practices. There's a thing I just saw it this morning on Facebook when I was digging through, and a news report, a seeming innocuous, relatively benign news report, actually two news reports, the same woman, exactly the same woman with two different names, totally made up bullshit. Like it's all deception. It's all deception. And we have the numbers. We have the inherent right for self-determination, so that if the entire group of us, the people, say no, the so-called leaders, who are not leaders, they are supposed to be servants, have to follow it. They don't have a choice. They have to. I mean, there's not enough military, there's not enough guns, there's not enough bullets to take care of the population if the population says no. En masse, and like everybody says no. So please educate yourself, support your neighbors. If you see something that needs to change it. Move forward so that it changes. I mean, cannabis. We know that cannabis now is not a bad thing. It's not. It doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't destroy your children. It doesn't ruin their schoolwork. It's in fact rather healthy. If it's used properly, if it's done correctly, it's a fairly good thing for you. What do you think would happen if every single person just said, screw the law, I'm doing this? What are they going to do? They're going to put everybody in jail? Are they going to, they couldn't keep up. There's no possible way to do it. Carl brought this up with traffic tickets. If every single person out there who got a ticket challenged the ticket, the system would collapse. If every single person out there challenged the status quo completely, the system would collapse. It couldn't keep up. The only way the system works right now is people don't say no. But we've got to have,
make the change.
They don't make the change.
They don't force the change.
That's right. But we need to have everybody do it. When, one of the easiest, simplest, safest ways of doing this is simply say, I don't answer questions. Because every single cop out there is going to let you know you have the right to remain silent. So remain silent. Don't answer questions. There's lots of YouTube videos. If you just type YouTube, police, I don't answer questions, you'll get hundreds and hundreds of these. And look at them. Look at the dynamic. I don't answer questions. Well, why don't you answer questions? I don't answer questions. Okay, you're free to go. Because you have a right not to incriminate yourself. You have a right not to speak. You have a right to remain silent. So remain silent, right? Exercise these rights. There's a number of videos out there that says don't talk to police, because if you open your mouth, you are going to lose. And, that's how they're trained. They're designed that way. They want you to be in conflict. They want you to open their mouth. They want you to try to defend yourself, because as soon as you defend yourself, you're guilty of something, and they will find it and pin it on you. I don't answer questions. Have a nice day, right? Why are you detaining me? I'm not. Oh, have a nice day. Walk away. Be the boss. Be be the leader. Be the one who is in charge, because the people have always been in charge. They've just been told they're not, and they believed it, which is bullshit, because you are in charge. I don't know how to be any more clear than that.
Well, for those that haven't listened to any of our previous shows, or all of the previous shows, I know they're getting more and more of them right now. So there's a lot to listen to. But by all means, listen to what we've said in the past, because, we've said this before, and we'll have to keep saying it again. And we'll get new people listening. We'll get new people listening to the recordings. People share it. People need to get this information out. There are, what we say is good information. It is extremely helpful to those who are ready and able to listen. And, you know, we've spent so many years, John and I, and lots more like us, educating ourselves about everything that we're talking to you about now, and have experienced in many different ways. And we know that it's time. Now is the time for us to put all of this in. This is why we're doing the shows.
It was time, you know, 15
we
years
had a
ago.
Conversation. It was
time 15 years ago, but we just couldn't get the numbers.
Yeah.
We had enough. We had enough to cause issues. We had enough to make the powers that were majorly nervous, like really nervous. We were so close. We were so close 15 years ago. But we got to do it. We have to do it now. And we've got the tools. We've got the backing. We've got the numbers. There's no reason why we can't change the system, change it back to a service-oriented, meritocratic system that it should have been in the first place.
Agreed. As simple as I can make that one. Agreed.
I mean, if you really look at what's going on, look at how many people are out there, look at the education level. Sure, if you're a cynic, you're going to look out there and you see all these young people wandering around with their face buried in a phone and they're oblivious. But there's also an awful lot of people out there who get it. And we have enough. We have enough people. We have the numbers to do this. We just have to get the collective will. We have to be as organized as the system that wants to control us. And when we can do that, we'll walk right over top of them because we have all the cards. The deck is stacked in our favor. The only reason why we're losing is because we are not really sure what game we're playing, even though the deck is stacked in our favor. But let's learn it. Let's learn the game. Let's just change the game. Let's make it our game, not theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there were people that would say, you know, let's create our own society, be the society that we want, rather than exist in the one that's created for us right now. They don't really let you do that. It's really hard to do that because wherever you want to exist, the people that are living in that other system, that other society, want to impose it on you, whether they want to do it through malice or whether they want to do it because they believe that they're correct in it. You know, the question of vaccinations, you know, there are people out there that really wholeheartedly, vehemently believe that vaccines work. Of course, there are the opposite who vehemently believe that they don't, and in fact cause harm, not you know, make us a safer society against disease.
Yep. And then there
are people out there like that.
There's another fairly large group who it's not a belief, it's a knowing. I know they don't work. I know they are useless. I don't have to believe it. I know it. It's the knowing. It's when you look at this information, not necessarily just the vaccine, but when you look at anything and you learn anything, you get it. It's complicated at the beginning. It's very confusing at the beginning. There's lots of questions, but you rapidly get to the point where you don't have to look anymore. You don't have to research anymore because you know it. You know what a screwdriver does.
That's the point where I was talking about, John, where we lose the fear.
Yep.
Because there's no fear of the unknown anymore. We know this. So because you know it, you're not fearful of it anymore. You can stand up and confidently say and do whatever in relation to whatever subject it is that you are confident in because you know it. It's when you don't know it and you try and act or behave or talk that's when there's the uncertainty, and in the worst cases, that's when there's the fear. Yeah. Because of that. And that's why I say lose the fear. That's what I'm meaning. When you lose the fear, you're gaining the education, you're gaining the knowledge that's needed to help that become a reality. Yeah. And the more you become knowledgeable, the more things and subjects that you can become familiar with, the less things scare you, the less fear you have in life. It doesn't go away completely, because I think, as we know, it's a programming of humans, but you can learn to transcend it. You can learn to not let it affect your life in more ways than living in love is, because the more that you can go to that area and you can live in that state of gratitude and love and knowledge and intellect with spirituality, then the better your life will be.
Yeah, I mean,
but there's too much fear, and they feed it.
I used the word a few minutes ago where we're losing, and Brianna kind of took exception to that, and she says, "I would not really say we're losing. I would say we have not really even tried yet," and I completely agree. But I use that word as a catalyst to get people to go, wait a minute, we are losing, because if we don't act, we're screwed. And stuff like what Heather did with the UCC filings, and that she spent as long working on that as Carl and I have collectively working on what we've done. It's useless. It's worthless if we don't act on it. If we don't pick up the ball and run with it, there's no point. They even called the game, because we have to move ahead with this. We have to pick this up. There's I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I have lived as best I could outside of the system as an example for a whole bunch of people who have looked and went, well, why do you do this? And if it doesn't go anywhere, then the last 15 years of my life have been a complete waste. I may as well have just stayed and hung on to my licenses and kept my passport and all of this sort of stuff. But I morally couldn't do that, because I needed to live what I know. Now, I don't want it to be a waste. I don't want it to be useless, because nobody's going to pick up. Nobody's going to see it and go, hey, that's right. Because I know it's right. I know that I don't need someone's permission, especially someone who has no liability. I do not need their permission to care for a dog, to own a house, to build a house, to travel. I have a right to do these things. I was born on this planet. I have a right to go anywhere on this planet I bloody well please, as long as I'm not causing harm, losses, or damage. If I want to go to Australia and live in Australia, I should be able to do that. I have a right to do that, because nobody owns the dirt. Everybody owns the dirt. It's all, we all share it. And I'm happy to share. And if it gets to the point where my presence is causing an issue, then I will move on. I will go find a place where my presence doesn't cause an issue, where my presence is actually a benefit. That's fine. That's the way we all should be living. And we need to pick this up and run with it. And I'm going to be beating this about the ears for the next 15 years until it works.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to keep doing it, because, I mean, I guess we've gone through, and I know you kind of stepped back from the World Freeman Society. I guess because you probably had some interests of your own that you wanted to follow at the time. But I also believe that there are stages, and I went through it too, where you do this for so long, and then you really do. You sit back and you think, why am I doing this? Why? Because I am giving of myself. I'm putting myself out there to the rest of the world, trying to wake them up, trying to make them see what is the real truth, what is our existence, our reality. And they don't want to see it. They don't want to have anything to do with it, because they're quite happy driving around, you know, with 2 vehicles on the driveway and a 4-bedroomed home for, you know, a 1-child family on a 2-acre lot. And they're earning tons and tons of money.
Which I mean, they can do that. That's awesome. But the problem there is that they have some other individual who has absolutely no liability telling them they have to do it a certain way. If you want to have a 4-bedroom house, have a 4-bedroom house. I don't care. But when the bank says you have to create the funds and then we're going to charge you because you created the funds, and if you do not agree to what we charge you for creating those funds yourself, then we're going to take everything away from you and you still owe us. That's bullshit. That's total crap, because it's not even truth. It's not, it's not real. It's not the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is you paid for the house when you signed that promissory note. It's done. It's over. All the bank did was convert one species of money to another and give it back to you. There was no loan ever.
No.
That's what I disagree with. That's what I can't allow to continue.
And that was the focus of my attention for a long time, the monetary system, because I believed in my heart that that was the basis of the control. That was the basis of our existence, our society. So if I could tell people how and why this was happening, then they would have a different concept, a different belief attached to money and how it was created and so on. So that was a big focus of my attention for a long time, even to the extent of trying to find alternative means of using money that was transparent and public based rather than the current private system. But when all said and done, the question, or rather the statement that we made before about deceptive acts and practices, that you have to understand what that means. And in the case of loans and money, that is deceptive acts and practices personified.
Pretty much.
So, you know, you have to really comprehend when we say what deceptive acts and practices actually means in relation to the maxims of law, then you have to apply that to whatever the situation is that you're questioning and figure out what are those deceptive acts and practices, because they're there pretty much in everything.
Yeah. And, you know, it kind of touches on what Peter brought up. And he says this legalese stuff is not easy to understand. Agreed. Totally agreed. It is not easy to understand. It's that way for a reason. However, we are well past the point where you really need to comprehend the legalese. All you need to comprehend is that it's bullshit. First of all, it's a language you don't understand. So how can you be held liable for anything that's in it if you don't comprehend that language? If somebody comes up to you and starts nattering at you in Tamil and all you speak is French, they could say anything that they want and you can't be held liable for what they're saying because you don't understand. You don't speak that language. So legalese is the same way, right? Once you recognize it is a different language, the words mean different things and you have no idea what it means. You don't understand the syntax. You don't know how the words are put together. You can't be held for this. The basic...
I think one of the things that you come back to on that, John, is simply the very fact that we're looking at symptoms. The legalese is basically a symptom of the law system, when we should be looking at what the root cause of any of these actions are, which, as we've already pointed out, is presumptions of the courts and jurisdiction. And if you can understand those concepts, the very basis of those concepts, then everything else is irrelevant. The symptoms, no matter what it is, and in the case of law, it's whatever statute and legalese that gets thrown at you, is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's simply a symptom of the law system, and the very basics of it are jurisdiction and presumptions. And if you can call into question that jurisdiction and say, you don't have jurisdiction, you better prove it before you bring this action. And if you can't, then see ya. And if everybody does that, then we can most easily win, instead of having to worry about fighting a legal action that's been brought against us. Send the bloody thing back, return, lack of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yep. I mean, don't get bogged down in the language. Carl and I, we needed to get bogged down in the language when we were doing this, because we had to find the niggly little details that proved our points. We're way past that now. It's so obvious that it's fraudulent that you don't need to get bogged down in the language anymore. You simply recognize the fraud, recognize the deception, and question that. And that's sufficient. We now have the tools where the simplest understanding, the simplest comprehension of these there's a very specific word I want to use, but I can't remember what the word is. The deceptions, the frauds, the malfeasance. That's the word. The barest, simplest comprehension of the malfeasance that's being perpetrated against us is all it's required now. Because it's so clear, it's so obvious. And the tools that we have to work with now are simple. They don't require 15 years of study anymore. All they require is a recognition of fundamental truths. So,
yeah, Peter's bringing something up there as a question, and I think let me address it a little bit. What I've just said, and I think what John's saying now as well, is we have said in the past, you have to comprehend instead of understand. You have to know what a person is, what an individual is, whether it makes any difference. That's all part of the legalese. That's the language trickery. That really gets down to the fact in how you respond to any kind of legal challenge and how you deal with any court situation. Also comprehending what the difference is between contempt. Yeah, if you're going to find yourself in a legal situation and the judge is going to throw that shit at you, then if you're able to, firstly, question, are you addressing me? Judge will never answer that damn question because he's not addressing you. He's addressing the person. But the next part of it, if he wants to come up and give up bullshit about contempt, well, is that civil contempt or is that criminal contempt? The fact that you can answer that throws a spanner in the works of the court system. And that's great if you ever find yourself in that. But what we're trying to say now is that why would you even step into that arena when you can just simply say, I'm questioning your jurisdiction to bring this action in the first place. Yep. I have the right under the 7 elements of jurisdiction to ask that you prove your jurisdiction. And if you can't, then go away, leave me alone, and keep returning that paperwork and never even step into that arena. Yes, that takes some balls. The chances are that they will do everything that they possibly can to steamroll you anyway. But if you're doing it as an individual, they'll get away with it.
Yep.
If you've got 7 million people all of a sudden start challenging all of their legal documentation in this way, challenging jurisdiction and the presumptions of court for anybody that's brought into a court system, it collapses within weeks because they can't deal with that. But the problem is that with so few of us, are actually challenging and acting until there's some kind of social media explosion that says, well, you can do this, go ahead and do it. And then the media gets involved and it all fizzles out. Or people get challenged and the bottle drops, you know? And that's the polite way of saying it. But that's what happens. You know, they get pushed back, they fight, and they lose confidence. Yes, you should have friends. You should have people supporting you in this, because doing it on your own is scary. Believe me, we've been there. So yeah, it's scary. Have people that know more than you, and help educate you to become a better member of society. Even if it's a shitty society at the moment, you know, but exist and deal with things in a different way than we currently are. Because that's part of the problem. The status quo only stays the status quo because nobody forces a change. And that's what we need to do, is force the change. When that happens, and the quicker that happens, the quicker we will have the society that we want to live in. Because government itself isn't inherently bad. You know, we don't want to do away with government. What we want to do is have a better government, a government for the people. And that's where we're kind of moving towards. And it doesn't need to be huge and massive the way it is now, because all that bureaucracy and bullshit that we get fed doesn't need to exist. If we're a better population and we're better as humans and humanity, we don't need half of these rules and, you know, 60 million codes just for one country. Yeah, that's just a propagation of the legal system and a way of keeping lawyers in business that they can charge, you know, $3, $4, $5, and $1,000 an hour. Where the hell do they get off charging that kind of money? I know people that are barely making $12 an hour. So how does that happen?
Yep. Peter asked the question, are all Western countries corporations? The countries themselves, let me pull that so it stops beeping in my ear. The countries themselves, no. The landmass, the people that live there, no, they're not. The controllers who have taken over the countries, the banking system, the legal system, the medical system, yes, they are. And any of the systems that require you to be liable, yet do not take liability themselves, those are the ones that we have foreclosed on. Those are the ones that we have basically made go away, or are in the process of making go away. So the legal system. When was the last time you heard of a lawyer who brought an action that turned out to be false, went to jail for it? Or a judge who made a mistake, who made a ruling and put an innocent person in prison, who later found out that they were innocent and the judge was full of shit? When did that judge ever lose his job or go to jail? There's no accountability there, and that's what we've moved into stopping. Is they are now accountable for their actions, and pretty much all of them know it now. They'll try to hide it. They'll try to make sure that you don't bring it up, but when you push it, they know. They are well aware that they're liable for their actions. We still need to understand to be confident. Yes, you do need a core understanding. You do need some basic knowledge to work from. But that basic knowledge is getting easier and easier as time goes by. Back when Carl and I were doing this stuff in a big way, you needed a vast library of knowledge to work from. Now, you don't need nearly as much. You need a strong, clear comprehension of who you are, and that everything is exactly backwards. from the way it should be. When you have that, most people have the confidence to deal with this stuff. Mark isn't here today. It's kind of sad because I was really hoping to hear from him today, but he spent a number of years looking at the details and didn't really get anywhere. He had lots and lots of knowledge, but he hadn't made the connections. And he talked to Carl and I for a couple of hours. We made some connections, and he realized that the knowledge he required was actually really simple. It didn't need libraries of information. It needed some really basic things. And that these people are lying, they are going to lie, and here is how you catch them in the lie. And once you catch them and you bring it up in a public venue, you win. They run away and run and hide. You'd be confident before acting. I would strongly suggest that you be confident before acting, because these people, they do it for a living. They know, and if you show the slightest weakness, if you show the hesitation, or that you're not confident in what you're doing, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to cram it down your throat. That's what they do. That's how they earn their living.
And to some extent, that's how they can be confident too, because they know the subject, so they can deal with whatever's thrown at them because they do it daily. So okay, if you're gonna challenge that that particular man or woman in his job, then you better know what the answers are before you ask the questions. And that's another thing we've always said. You don't go in blind. If you're going to ask a question or make a statement, then make sure you know the answer to the question before you ask it. And if you're going to make a statement, make sure you're not making an allegation that you can't back up.
That's right. So one of the simplest ones that I heard of, this was years ago when this came out. There was a subsistence hunter on Vancouver Island who Fish and Game came to his cabin because he lived out in the woods. Him and his family were out in the woods. They didn't deal with people. They were all by themselves. Fish and Game came and they basically took his kids away, took his guns away, charged him with a whole bunch of stuff, which he wasn't liable for anyway because he wasn't causing anybody harm. Nobody actually had a claim against him. He got a hold of us, and Rob Menard went and worked with him for a while. And basically what his defense was, I brought this up a couple of times in a couple of shows already, is he crafted a document that said, I have looked at your law, and nowhere in your law do I see love, honesty, truth. Therefore, that cannot be my law. And he submitted that. Simple, basic, his understanding, his comprehension of this. It took a little while, but he got all his guns back, his kids back, everything, he got it all back because they couldn't argue with it. And they didn't want to argue with it because if they did, he was going to bring up the fact that there's no truth in anything in that law. There's no honesty, there's no love in that law. And they didn't want that to happen. So it doesn't have to be complicated. But you do have to know who you are. And that's critical in this situation.
And that basically is the answer to the question Peter just asked. If you don't know who you are, you grant jurisdiction and you grant the power to those who would seek it from you. That's how it gets granted. That's how corporations walk all over you because you let it happen. That's what a contract is. Everything is a contract. The law, mostly, is a contract. And if you agree to it and you sign for it, then you're bound by it.
Well, legal.
And that's what they attack you on.
Legal is a contract. Lawful is dealing with truth and love and rights. And lawful deals with harm, loss, or damage. Legal is it's in 100% contracts. 100%.
Yeah. And that's the area of the corporations that I think Peter was specifically asking about. But yeah, I guess it was a good idea to differentiate.
Yeah. And,
of course, I agree.
And Peter's bringing up a couple of points here I'd like to touch on. The last one here says, even if we didn't understand the contract, it's presumed that you did because you entered into the contract. It's one of the presumptions of a Roman court is that you are presumed to be competent until you are shown to not be competent.
You'll always find as well that in contract law, like there'll always be a clause in it that says you have had and refused, or you have taken or sought legal advice in regards to the elements of this contract. If you sign any kind of contract that has that clause in it, then you are presumed to have understood exactly what all those clauses and elements were, or you sought out legal advice to have that explained to you, and you agreed, which is why you've signed it.
Yep.
Because you'll find that in most contracts, somewhere along the line, that will be in there.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a little bit of legal trickery that they use to bind you to something that you may not even realize you're doing. But if you put your name to any document, and you don't know what's in that document, you deserve what you get, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry to say, but you know, if you're not going to read it, if you're not going to at least look it over to make sure that it is exactly what you agree to, then you're do whatever's going to happen to you. I mean, you know, one of the things that we used to use to wake people up was, you know, do you have a driver's license? Well, yeah, of course I do. Well, did you read the Motor Vehicle Act before you got your license? Well, no. So, well, how do you know you need one? Well, everybody knows. Well, no, everybody doesn't know because I know I don't need one. And, you know, if you're not aware of what you're getting yourself into, you're still liable for what you get yourself into.
Yeah. Peter's asked a question there, which is something I've brought up on many discussions, you know, where taxes come in. Taxes is not a single thing. Taxes becomes due because of a number of different things that you do in daily life.
Yep.
First big one, you end up getting a social insurance number. That's big one, number one. Secondly, you become employed. As soon as you become employed, you are a agent or a contractor of, or an employee of a agent of the government. That's how it works. And because you are an agent, because you are a contractor, and because you are an employee, you are liable to submit your taxes. If you are an independent contractor or you exist as a private contract person, body, man, woman, then it is private. It is outside that system. So in that case, unless you put yourself in it, as most people do, because I have a business, I've got to register my business. There you go. You registered and you now become liable for taxes, blah, blah, etc., etc. The other thing is bank accounts. You give your social insurance number to bank accounts. Anything you put in that bank account means that you have a liability to pay tax on the interest that's earned on anything in that bank account. You also open yourself up to be questioned where the money came from in the first place that you put in that bank account. Do I need to go on?
Yeah, Peter.
There are so many ways that you drop yourself in it.
Peter, you mentioned a Form 401. I assume that's US. In Canada, it's a TD1. And yes, that is.
No, that's the employment form. I think it is.
Yeah, that is
because he's in Canada.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the TD1. When you start a job with some other company, they give you the TD1 form, which that is your contract. That yes, you agree to deal with income tax. Now it's well within your right to say, you know, the company is not going to deduct the taxes. I will pay them myself, which that goes into your being a private contractor for the government because you have your employee identification number. I mean, it's all of that's changed now because of the UCC filings. So yes, that's the way it was. It's not the way it is anymore. You own the straw man. It is now your entity. It is your property. It's all been removed from the controller's hands, put into the hands of the individuals who were initially the beneficiaries of it. We are now the owners of it. It is our entity. We can even copyright it if we want now, and they cannot use that name without permission. Everything's changed. There's so much that has changed. It could take a long time. It could take years for us to actually comprehend the gravity of all of this. But the argument that you're not the legal name, it's yes, totally valid. But you are now absolutely in control of that legal name. It's part of what the filings did. The straw man is now your property. And because it was created without your consent, it was created without your knowledge, and it was created as a entity of profit. So because of that, because of the deceptive acts and practices, you have a right to claim ownership of it and ownership of all of the profit that it created, because it was that the profit was created at your expense. So you are rightfully entitled to it. And that's that's
tort action.
That's right.
That's necessarily damaged in that.
That's partly what the filings did was they removed control of the straw man. They removed control of all of that stuff from the controllers, and now it belongs to you. You are in absolute control of it. It's back to being a raincoat like it's supposed to be in the first place. So, again, the ramifications of that, they're huge. I'm just beginning to fathom what's actually occurring because of it. And it could take a while for that to all trickle down. But don't let it freak you out anymore, because it doesn't matter. It's no longer an issue. Now, we have to go about it in the right way. It's going to still be used against a lot of people who don't get it. But it won't, once we have some numbers and some people pushing this, it won't be very long.
Yeah. Well, if the status quo continues, then everything just continues. We have to tip it. We have to make that change.
Yeah. Peter asks, if you don't register a business, can you get insurance for that business? Insurance is a scam, buddy. It's a gamble. If you don't register the business, you own it. If you register it, you don't own it. You're simply an employee of the trustee who you've signed your business over to.
The other section there as well that he mentions about most high private contractors that are not registered or insured, they do that for a reason, because if you don't get registered or insured, then you don't get to work in that industry, not in the way that you are capable of being able to function. I liken it to the daycare centers that blew up all over the country of Canada when it was forced on us, because they changed the school times, that now you had to have daycare in the morning because, the kids were in school before you even went to work, or they were home well before you got out of work. So you needed some form of daycare. So they exploded. The registered daycares were the ones that were all governed by the provinces and the governments themselves. But that didn't mean to say that there weren't unregistered daycares in existence. Was there any difference between the two? Absolutely not. They were both daycares. and both of them probably running wonderfully well. Just one of them wasn't registered with the local province, and the other one was. But that doesn't mean to say that one was better than the other. But they will put it out there that, oh, if you go to the unregistered one, oh, it's just, oh, it's so dangerous. They have no controls. They have all that bullshit. That's what it's all about. It's about control of the industry. Nothing to do with your ability to do that job. And in the case of being a daycare center, many daycare centers that weren't registered were working exceptionally well. Of course, there's always the stupid numbnuts that goes along and just wants to grab money and doesn't give a shit about the kids that they're supposed to be looking after and don't. That happens. But registration doesn't alter that fact, because the registration process is only a process that you go through to register with the local governments and to get the license. It doesn't mean to say that you're still going to be a good daycare provider, because as we've all seen in the papers, many registered daycare centers also have that same problem, that they don't look after the kids very well. And, the local authorities come in and shut them down too. So it makes no difference either way. It's just a medium of control. And insurance definitely is a scam. And I hate every part of it. And every time that I have to, or I'm told that I have to do something for insurance, it drives me insane.
Yeah. Peter also brings up the thing that most large companies won't hire a private contractor that aren't registered or insured. This is true. If you are going to go down this road, then you're not going to be looking for employment with a large company. You're going to be looking, if you're going to get involved in a company, it's going to be a cooperative. It won't be a corporation. It'll be a group of individuals gathered by mutual consent to deliberate, determine, and act for common goal. Not a hierarchy like a company would be. Chances are that you're going to be doing it privately, and you're going to have your own service that you provide for your own clients on a private basis, and you're going to keep it in the private. You're not going to enter into the public realm at all if you can possibly avoid it, at which point those rules don't apply. So anybody who's looked at forming a club, if you have a club, if you have a private members only area, the external public rules don't apply in that members area. It's only the members rules that apply in that area. Life is the same way. If you live in the private, you deal with your own rules, not with the public rules. And a lot of stuff changes when you move from the public to the private. Most people don't understand that because most people have never lived like that. But when you are living a service lifestyle where you serve others in a private capacity for your living, and you don't go and make widgets all day for some nameless corporation that pays you, 1.5% of what you're actually earning. Everything changes. Everything's different. The rules are different. The way you interact with people are different. You're doing what you like to do, what you love to do, and you're doing what you're really, really good at, rather than what you can or what you can find. And it changes. Everything, a whole bunch of things change. I'm too old to start again. Yeah, I'm over 50, and I know I know what it's like. So I'm trying to find, something I can do that's going to get me through. But again, like I said a few minutes ago, everything is changing right now. And the old ways, the old rules, the old things that got in the way, very, very shortly, very rapidly will not apply anymore. So don't panic. If you're stuck in the system, just get through it for the next little while, because you won't have to deal with it very much longer. There's so many things that are changing. It's gonna be mind-boggling in the next few years. So push the reset.
Well, we're certainly hoping that that's the case, aren't we?
Yeah, push the reset, respond, change.
We're envisaging is going to happen.
Well, we're seeing it happen, Carl. I mean, you know, we're kind of on sort of a unique little ride ourselves, because we're involved in groups that are really at the forefront of doing a number of these changes and seeing these changes come to fruition. And some of the stuff, it's not going to be obvious in public for a while, for a couple of years. You know, some of it's probably going to come out next week. And it's all a process. It's going to be a growth process, because we have to re-educate everybody. Everybody's got to learn a new way of living, a new way of interacting with one another. And, you know, when the ICOM, the iTech comes in and comes online, that's basically the end result, where all of the problems are done. You don't have to worry about earning a living. You don't have to worry about having food or health care or any of that stuff, because you do it yourself, and you do it simply by willing it to be. Sounds like a pipe dream, but it's not. It's coming. And how long it's going to be, I can't say. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5 years. Who knows? Depends on us, I guess.
It does depend on us, because we're the ones that have to force the issue. Like I said, status quo just means status quo. Nothing changes.
Yep.
So we have to force it. We really, really do. And so the more people that get to hear this information and bring it out, the better that will be. And of course, you mentioned before that it may take years for this information to get out. That also presupposes that the mainstream media remain doing what they currently do as mainstream media, which is, you know, obfuscate everything that they possibly can about the realities of the system.
Yeah.
If they change that and they start reporting this and giving that information in mainstream, then people will find out quickly, and they will have to act on it quickly, because now everybody's going to become aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how it's going to play out. We know it's going to play out, but we don't know how. We don't know the mechanism that's going to be involved in this. So we can't even predict. We know it's coming. It's a mathematical certainty, but as far as how and when, I can't say.
Yeah. Well, as Peter pointed out there, it's a dying system. We know it's dead already, actually.
Yeah.
The only reason it's continuing right now is because of frantic life support and the fact that the people who are operating within the system are keeping it going because they don't know it's dead yet. And I'm talking about the likes of, you know, you and I as the listener. If we keep interacting with that system and we keep using it, then it will stay afloat. We just have to back away from it, and we have to stop using it and challenging it as often as we possibly can to make the changes.
Yep.
Because until we do, nothing happens.
Stuff like if you know someone who owns a business and they are, I mean, this is going to be a Canadian reference. I'm sorry, folks elsewhere, but I'm sure you have your own local equivalents. If they are under the impression that they're obligated to collect GST, okay, they are not obligated to collect GST. The government is using you as a collector for their revenue. You can bill the government for collecting their GST. And I know this is a fact because a friend of mine in Prince Rupert who had a restaurant was getting nickel and dime to death. He's losing all his profits because of the paperwork and the time it's required to do all that garbage. So he simply wrote him a letter and said, I'd be more than happy to continue to collect your GST, but because it's costing me a tremendous amount of profit, I am going to have to bill you now $5 for every piece of paper it generates. And he got a letter in the mail a couple of weeks after he sent that in saying you don't collect GST anymore. You're not a slave. This is what I say. You know, it's come up. A number of people say it. It comes up in all of the videos. Know who you are. If you think you're a slave, if you think you are a subject, then these people, all they have to do is wave a piece of paper and go, you have to, and you're going to think you do. If you know who you are, they wave a piece of paper around and you go, are you going to be liable for that piece of paper? And they're going to go, no. And then you can say, well, it means nothing to me then. Goodbye. Because you're not a slave. No one, unless you agree to it, can put an obligation upon you without compensating you. They can't say you have to do...
Unless you allow it.
That's right, unless you agree to it. They can't say, you are going to wash my floor. You know, hold a gun to your head. Yeah, they may get the floor washed, but you are well within your right to bill them $1,000 a square foot. Now, if you have a fee schedule like mine in place, that's public record, that's known and perfected, chances are they're just going to leave you alone. They don't bother me because they know that I know who I am. I'm not a slave. If they want to put an obligation upon me, it better be a lawful obligation that I've agreed to, that I've consented to, or they will be billed for my time and my efforts, my services. And that is going to get really expensive really fast. So they leave me alone. They don't bother me anymore. Know who you are. That's all. The best advice I can give you is know who you are. Are you a subject? Are you a slave? Are you a citizen? Or are you simply a human being just as free as everybody else?
I think a lot of that also goes along the lines of how you can exist, because the research that I've done, both you and I have done over the years, I've gotten to a state where I work for myself. I exchange my labor for whatever it might be. But I certainly state in advance that anything, firstly, it's private contract based. Mm-hmm. I have no registered business. I have no registered bank accounts, although I do have a bank account, but it's... as you pointed out, it's what they call that tin cup, did you say?
Yep.
Account, John?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's in essence, under the Bank Act, it's actually a personal deposit account for private use. And it's different from the personal deposit account for retail use that they sell you every time you go into a bank. And it's written into the Bank Act. So they have to look it up and they should still give you that account. But there are ways of operating. Every check that you put in, you make sure that you show that it's for credit or in exchange for the Federal Reserve notes or the Bank of Canada notes or the Bank of England notes. It's credit. It's not payment. You've never got paid.
Yep.
So you have to point out, you know, if any taxman comes to you, well, is credit taxable? Because if it isn't, then I don't owe any tax because everything I've ever earned has been credit.
Yep.
And earned is another one.
Yep. Or compensation. I mean, that's why it's called income tax. So if it's not income, does income tax apply? No.
Mm-hmm.
By
and
definition.
You have to look at what income is specifically, the definition of income.
That's right. And hold them to it. Putting a fee schedule on the record, easiest way to do it is to hand them a copy. I mean, I did mine by posting it on the internet. Putting it in public forums, sending it. I've sent one to the Queen. I sent one to Prime Minister, to a bunch of different higher ups, and notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. So by giving it to someone, you know, if they say, well, you have to do this, you have to do this. Well, I will agree to do that. Here's my fee schedule, and hand them a copy. I mean, you can't bill someone who hasn't been informed that you bill for your time. You have to give them notice, and so you give them notice. You give them a way out. Say, here's my fee schedule. Are you absolutely certain you want my services? And most of the time, well, you can't bill for this. Well, are you claiming I'm a slave? And then you get to bring that up, and they do not like to answer that question. And it typically goes away at that point. They say, go away. I mean, if you're seeking a license, if you're seeking a registration, you can't bill. But if they're coming and they're putting the obligation upon you, then you can. So again, know who you are. If you're seeking their services,
around with that one a little bit as well, John. If you remember, with the phone calls, you get the telemarketer calling you, and I've had so much fun with that one because you can test that out. You can get more familiar with how you can do it. And it's quite simple because they'll ask you, have you got 5 minutes or 10 minutes to answer these questions for me? And my response has typically been, sure, yeah, can I have your name, your address, and will you agree that if I provide you with all this information and you take my time, that I can invoice you? My rate is $500 an hour and minimum charge is 1 hour. Are you agreeing to that? And they go ballistic on the phone. I've had one woman just screaming at me how greedy I was. And my response was, well, hang on a minute. You called me. You wanted to take my time and you wanted me to provide information to you for free that you are then going to charge money for. And you're calling me greedy? I'm just asking for what it is that I believe I owe. And if you're going to ask me for it, I'm going to charge for it. And the last woman I did that to just put the phone down on me. She couldn't answer at that point because I'd just blown her argument right out of the water that she was the one that was actually being greedy, not me. It's a different style of thinking, but it's fun to do that as well because you become more confident and enjoy doing that. And you can do it in many different ways and areas of your life.
Yeah, one of the things I do to help feed my dog is I webmaster a number of websites. So I've got my name and phone number on a number of registrations for domain names. And I used to get 6-7 calls a day from people who, we'll make your website better and all of this stuff. And essentially my question is, well, if you're after my services, my fee is $500 an hour, a part thereof. When do we start? And they freak out. I mean, they don't get it through their head that they're phoning me looking for my services. They're looking for me to agree to let them into my websites to do whatever they do. Okay. It's still my services. They're taking up my time. They're taking up my energy. I bill for that because I know who I am, and they don't like it very much, and they don't call me anymore. One of my sites I have right on there because my phone number is on the website. It says right there, notice, calls not relating directly to what the site is about will be billed at $200 per occurrence. And no one has phoned that phone number except for specific business related directly to that website, not building, search engine optimization or making web pages or anything like that. It's the actual business that the site was about. So yeah, you're well within your rights to bill for your time. You're well within your rights to let people know that you know who you are, that you're not a slave, that you're not a subject, you're not a citizen. You don't want to be a citizen. Citizen's the bottom of the pile. Look in old English dictionaries for what is the term? It's not political divisions. Well, no, it's there's a specific term, and it's similar to political division, but it's not that. And the three divisions are citizen, burgess, and a freeman. And you'll find it in old, like turn of the century English dictionaries, British dictionaries, because that's where it came from. Citizen is the bottom of the pile. Burgess is only subject to the rules of the city. And a freeman is not subject to any political rules. They're politically free. And they still exist. They're still there. They are still on the books. So, if somebody asks you, are you a citizen? Get a definition. Find out exactly what they're asking you. Because if you just say, well, yeah, I'm a Canadian citizen, then that you may very well be property of the corporate Canadian government. Because that's basically what citizens mean these days. Which, again, because of the filings, because of what's going on recently, doesn't matter anymore, but still learn it, get to know it, become aware of it, because you're going to be using it quite extensively in the near future. So that's our 2 hours, folks. I can't believe I made it and I didn't fall asleep. I'm still here.
That went a bit quicker than we thought, too.
I am happily, yes, really glad, because I don't want to complain, but I haven't slept more than 3 hours in the last 8 days. Just the energy's out there, the energy's coming in. I just cannot sleep. I'll go lay down and flop around for 2 hours and give up. And it's over and over and over, day in and day out. I'm starting to wear pretty thin. So hopefully I'll be in better shape next week. Thanks everybody for being here and for listening to us ramble for 2 hours. Thanks for the questions. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, Carl. Sorry, I'm not really here. I got to go and lay down for a little while.
That's all right. I appreciate, as always, the fact you co-hosting the show with me and the fact that you're actually producing it too. So, yeah, I really so much appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for coming and listening to us live. And for anybody else who's listening later, I hope you enjoyed the show. Listen to the rest of them. There's some really good information in there, and hopefully it's of some real interest to you. And, of course, we'll see you next week. As always, take care for now.
Yep, thanks. Just as an aside, I'm struggling with income. I'm trying to come up with ways of serving so that I can at least generate some income and feed my dog and buy clothes and all that sort of stuff. I've put Essentio Mentium up on Steemit. If you go to steemit.com and you look and you do a search for Essentio Mentium, one word, you'll find the Essentio Mentium archives. This is a monetization platform. Please help us out. It won't cost you anything other than a couple of mouse clicks. But if we can get a couple of thousand people to click likes and assist and do some sharing, that'll provide both Carl and I with a little bit of extra income so that we can get some of the load off and be a little bit less stressed every week trying to pay the bills. Fortunately, it won't be long before all that's gone away anyway. But in the meantime, please help us out. I tried monetizing the Facebook or the YouTube, and they changed all the rules, and it's ridiculous. Steemit is a nice, easy way. It won't cost you guys anything other than a couple of mouse clicks, and it'll definitely help us out. So we'll have links on that, and you'll be able to find it pretty easy. Anybody who's familiar with Steemit, they know what's going on. So thank you very much. Sorry?
I dropped it in the server chat there. So
yes. Okay.
I've got the direct link.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, share it around. Help us out. I've got a website called Skillshare Global. And and that's link is in the chat as well. The link is skillshare.newearthhost.com. And what it is, it's a membership site where You can either offer services or ask for services. It's built around job sharing or job seeking software. So the people who are offering services, it's very similar to filling out a resume. The people who are seeking services, it's like offering a job. So there's going to be a few things in there that may not apply. If it doesn't apply, just leave it default values. It's entirely user driven. If you want to charge for your services or it's free or whatever, it's entirely up to you. The only control that I take on that site is make sure that what you're doing is lawful and that what's advertised is what is actually being provided. Other than that, you can teach, you can share, you can paint houses, you can fix cars, you can mow lawns. It doesn't matter. It's a skill share in a global sense. And I'm looking, my goal for October is 2,000 members. Once we have, I think 2,000 is going to be a milestone. Once we have that, then it's really going to flow. And so if you can see a benefit to that, advertise it in your area. Get people in your area involved in it. The membership fees are cheap, and they are far more to stop stupid people from coming in and ruining the system than making a huge amount of money. The server that it's on, the servers are very expensive, and a large portion of any revenue that's generated from that goes to maintaining the servers and expanding the system. But it's cheap, $3 a month, or if you order long term, it's even cheaper than that. Which is essentially nothing. I mean, like €2 a month for the ability to access any services that you may possibly need anywhere in the world. Share your services anywhere in the world. It's full advertising. I mean, it's an awesome deal. So that's another one of the things that I'm doing, trying to come up with a living, because I can't go and just work at McDonald's. I'm not allowed. So I'm struggling, trying to get this happening. I love your help. I don't want to take charity. I will if I have to, but I would rather serve you guys and do something that's of benefit to you and benefit everybody that way. So sorry for the blatant advertising, but it's to the point now where this is a significant issue, and I have to make noise. I can't just hope it goes away, because it's not going to go away unless we make it go away. So anyway, that's my rant. Thanks, folks. I'm sure if Carl's got his own stuff, if he wants to advertise, I'm sure he will. Maybe he'll go on, if he wants to go on Skillshare Global and put his computer services up. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Have a look.
Yeah,
look through.
I need to go. I haven't looked.
Yeah, have a look at the site. Have a look at the page, how it works, because I detail everything on there. It's probably still going to be a couple of questions, but most of the details of how the system is designed to operate is on that page. If you agree with it, if it's something that you find value with, please become a member. Please support us. Let's make this grow, because it's something people have been asking for. They want a central location where they can go and offer services and seek help and get the community built. And that's what this is all about, is building a global community where it doesn't matter where you go, what you do, what skills you have, or what problems you have, you're going to find solutions. So have a great day, guys. I'm going to go fall down. See you next week.
I've got to disappear myself, so I can't stay around too long myself either. But yeah, thanks again, John, and hopefully that link and all the other stuff will get passed around, and we can start getting some stuff going your way.
Yeah, me too. I really. Yeah. Oh, it's just ridiculous. Trying to, anybody who's tried to live off grid, under the radar, they know exactly what I'm going through. So, and they're hurting just as much as I am. I don't expect any I don't expect anything from anybody, but I'm putting it out there. I want to serve. I want to help. I want to provide something wonderful and hopefully get something back for it. If I don't get anything back, that's fine. I'll do it anyway. But anyway, we'll see you all. Probably talk to some of you during the week, and the rest of you, we'll see you next Sunday. Have a great day, guys.
Take care.